Right, good evening. Now, I just had to rewrite this slightly because we're now back into a normal seating position. So good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of Burnside Council of June the 16th, 2022, opening at 7 p.m. Council is meeting back in our pre-COVID horseshoe-shaped seating plan and people will wear masks by choice. The gallery is now seated within the chamber, deputations are live and public question time is available. I welcome those of you who are watching from home. Please remain silent and stand for the acknowledgements. We acknowledge that the land we meet on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the original custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important to the Kaurna people today. We also pay respect to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting and attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia. On behalf of the City of Burnside, I gratefully acknowledge and pay respect to those who have sacrificed their lives for this country and its people. We also consider in our thoughts all those currently affected by war, especially in the Ukraine. Finally, we seek understanding and guidance in our debate as we make decisions that will impact on the lives of all who reside, study, work in or visit the City of Burnside. Grant us wisdom as we serve our community. Please be seated. Please be patient and respectful of each other as we get used to the rearrangements. It's important that all views of the elected members are heard. I will be using the auto queuing system, so please use your button on your microphone to raise your hand and do not speak until I've acknowledged you. And most importantly, remember to turn off your microphone as soon as you have finished speaking. Now please turn off your mobile phone or place it on silent before we begin so that we can focus on the debate without interruption. The absences, 6.1. We have 3 apologies tonight from Councillors Carbone, Henschke and Hughes. We have no leave of absence. I seek any declarations of interest. No. Right, then we'll move on to confirmation of minutes. Can I have someone move the thank you, Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to make a minor correction to the minutes so that they read, just to add the word congratulates at the urgent and other business on page 3. It was that motion to congratulate Louise Miller-Frost on her election to Parliament, and I included the congratulates and it's been left off the wording. So it needs to read that the City of Burnside acknowledges all those elected to the new federal parliament and in particular congratulates Ms Louise Miller-Frost, former General Manager, Community and Development at the City of Burnside on her election to the seat of Boothby. The congratulates have been omitted.
Through Madam Mayor, no issue with the change, but I think it's important to note that it wasn't left off. That was exactly what was said on the evening. We checked the tape to make sure.
I remember saying I wanted to congratulate her.
They've checked the tape to make sure already.
Well, it was picked up in my speech. I said I wanted to congratulate her, and somehow that got left off the drafting. So I'm moving that it be included now, because that was the intent of the motion on the night, that we acknowledge her election and we congratulate her.
While I understand what you're saying, if the council administration have already checked and it doesn't appear on the audio of the meeting, then we can't actually change it unless I get someone else who wishes to move that amendment. Councillor Piggott, you're happy to do that?
Yep.
All right, a seconder, Councillor Hubel. All those in...
Can I actually ask a question?
Certainly.
Has the letter actually of congratulations been sent or anything like that that doesn't have the word congratulate in it?
It's gone.
Yeah, no.
And it would have had congratulate, sorry?
Yes.
Yeah, it had congratulate in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The letter that went out had congratulate in it, yeah. All right, so I will move this motion with the amendment. All those in favour? Against? Carried. No public questions, no adjourned business.
I have a question without notice.
All right, if you could just hold on to that. No presentations, no deputations, petitions, and I know Councillor Davey has something as well, but we'll start with you, Councillor Davis.
Sorry to jump in. I noticed there's no agenda item, but I think we did change that. A number of residents have been concerned regarding a removal of a number of trees within Kenzie Gardens Reserve, and I was hoping the administration, through you, Your Worship, could explain why those trees were removed.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, happy to provide that clarification. I'll just hand that over to Mr. Kent.
Through the Mayor, thank you for the question. I can confirm that recently, and I understand these are the vegetation that's of recent concern, we've removed 2 or 3 shrubby self-seeded woody weeds, which are olive and Italian buckthorn, and both are declared pest plants. These trees that these pest plants were growing underneath have been retained, however. We have also removed feral exotic sedges and other weeds growing in the channel and retained any indigenous sedges and wetland plants. So this is to eradicate the seed sources of feral species which continue to infest the downstream biodiversity sites. In the future, we will also do further work there, and we will top up the mulch in the existing beds. We'll plant at least 100 indigenous shrubs, small trees and ground layer plants. And we'll undertake an experimental planting of tough sedges on the steep banks of the channel to see if we can establish vegetation in this difficult area. This is a programme that we have been delivering for a number of years throughout the creek lines across the city to great results, and a good example of that is in Michael Perry Reserve. With respect to other recent tree removals, the only tree removals in KGR in recent times were to either accommodate the significant wetlands project, which was heavily publicised and all relevant approvals were given at the time. And in addition, there has been a handful of other trees removed from across the park that displayed very low life expectancy, poor health and or posed potential risk to public safety.
With a bit of luck, those people may be listening tonight. If not, Councillor Davey, I'm going to assume that you'll be able to relay that on. Via their Facebook page, perhaps? Yeah. Thank you. Very good. Now, Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. I wish to move another one of our illustrious residents has had a significant achievement. So I wish to move that congratulations to Dr. Susan Marsden, M-A-R, we've got that up there. The City of Burnside congratulates Dr. Susan Marsden, a local resident and member of the City of Burnside Heritage Reference Group, on her appointment as a member of the Order of Australia, AM, in the Queen's Birthday Honours for significant services to history and heritage as an author, academic and speaker. So I'm sure I don't need to say any more. She's an eminent historian and a very active member of our community, and it's a well-earned order.
Just
honour.
before it is seconded, there are 3 others who were awarded honours, the same honour, AM, for the Queen's birthday, and I have written to all 4 of them already.
Happy to add them too.
If you're happy, I would like to add them.
Absolutely.
So Mr. Wally Bell, Wally in inverted commas, who is a stalwart of the Burnside Rugby Club, an ex-player, coach, president, committee member for eons, I'll say, without being accurate in the number, but he was recognised for his service to rugby union and the community. Second one, I'm just doing these alphabetically, Mr. Jeffrey Ellison, who was awarded an AM for his contribution to tourism and community, and to Mr. Richard Hearn for his work in aged care and serving the community. And of course, you've already got there Dr. Susan Marsden. So I think it's important. I have already written to these people, and they have been mentioned in my article for the Herald next week, and they'll be mentioned tomorrow morning in Burnside Highlights as well. Now, do you wish to add something, Ted?
No.
Okay. Now I've got...
I was just going to ask you if I can get those words. And give
Oh,
it to the,
yes,
to the
there we
team
go. That's in there. I need that back.
So I'm very happy to
So if you're happy with that, because I think we can't, they have all got the highest honour.
Absolutely.
And Wally does not live in Burnside, but you cannot ignore his contribution to the growth and development of that club. So I certainly wanted to include him in it. the others are all residents of Burnside. And you're right to make a special mention of Susan because of her role in the Heritage Reference Group. So, now, Peter Cornish.
Happy to certainly second that, but Bronnie, if we could change COB to City of Burnside would be great. Just for the minutes would be great. I'm very, very happy to acknowledge when people receive an honour in this way for their outstanding contribution to our community.
Can I just clarify what the motion is going to say? We've obviously started with one quite specific around, so are we going to congratulate all four of them in alphabetical order with the reason they got them listed, as a for instance?
They've got the information from me, so that is right.
Yeah, through Madam Mayor, if you're happy, we may not be able to populate it in the next 2 minutes.
No, look, if you just describe it, I
But the
think it's
intent
probably
is,
best.
yes, I'll list them and
Intent is to add
describe.
those to, yeah.
But that's what I'm saying, just adding them looks weird. I think there should be a consistent approach across all four.
Motion till later in the meeting, so we've got time to flesh it out properly. Maybe we move this.
That's a very good
I
idea,
think
Councillor
that's,
Gill.
Lack of seconder and
No,
for the
you
sake of
No.
minutes.
could move a formal motion and ask for it to be adjourned till later in the meeting.
yes,
I would like
move
to
that formally. Councillor Cornish. Councillor Hubel. Moved, seconded by Councillor Davey. Councillor Jones, do you wish to withdraw it?
please.
Okay. Policy updates. Councillor Davey.
I'm happy to move in accordance
Right,
with the
you're moving it.
recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Davey, seconded by Councillor Cornish. All those in favour? Final recreation and sport strategy, Councillor Davey, you've got yours in there first.
Thank you. I'll
Final connected community strategy. Councillor Lemon.
I'll move it.
You're moving it, right? Thank you, Councillor Lemon, seconded Councillor Cornish. All those in Councillor Davey? I'll call that. You would like to withdraw it? Okay. Hazel Park Cafe? Councillor Davey?
Thank you.
Mayor's report?
Happy to move.
Councillor Cornish moving it? You're moving it, seconded by Councillor, I haven't got a name on here, Councillor Piggott. All those in favour? Carried. Against, carried. Minutes of the East Waste Management Authority. Anyone wish to withdraw it? Otherwise, Councillor Cornish, you're going to move it? Sorry, Councillor Lemon is moving it. Seconded by Councillor Cornish. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Minutes of the Eastern Waste Management Authority, 11.10. Councillor Piggott, you're moving it. Seconded by I need a button pressed. Councillor Cornish.
I think we're at 11.11, Your Worship.
Oh, sorry, I've missed, yes, we are. It's Eastern Health Authority.
Yep.
We're doing that one twice, apologies. So the Eastern threw me, okay. So you're moving, no, we've moved and seconded it, so all those in favour of Eastern Health Authority's report? Against? Carried. Are we in a position now to look at that motion, Bronnie? Not yet? Okay. Right, okay, so we will move then back to, no, 11.1. Councillor Cornish.
I pulled it because you needed someone to. So
Yes, we did. We did.
I'm happy to go through the process and seek nominations, I suppose. Is that usually the way we do it?
So you're happy to move that council 1 and 2, and then number 3 is what we're acting on
Yep.
now, all right? So unless there's anyone in opposition to that, we'll move just to number 3, which is undertaking a secret ballot process. And we need 2 council members to be considered as members of the selection working party. So I seek nomination. We have to do 1 and 2. Okay, okay, right, okay. So we need to move 1, 2 and 3. So Councillor Lemon, you're moving that?
I'm happy to move that. Although it is Cornish's movement. I'm happy to second it.
That is items 1, 2 and 3.
Yes.
All those in favour? Councillor Jones, you're nominating?
I nominate Councillor Hubel.
Right, Councillor Hubel, do you accept the nomination?
I will accept it. He's got the mic.
Me.
Ah, yes. Sorry?
I'm waiting for you to get to me.
Apologies, you are at the top, but I thought you'd already spoken. So,
I
okay.
turned off and went on again.
All right, okay. So Councillor Lemon,
Yes, I will nominate.
yourself?
Yes.
Okay. Next one is Councillor Dawes.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Piggott.
You'd like to Councillor Piggott. Do you accept the nomination, Councillor Piggott? Okay, thank you. All right, Councillor Davey,
I'm happy to nominate
yourself?
because I'm available during the week and,
All right, thank you.
and easy to
So,
facilitate.
is there anyone else who wishes to nominate? Right, so we have 3.
I move that all 3 be placed on the committee.
I think it becomes a bit overwhelming, Councillor Davis, and the recommendation there is for 2, but I'm happy to be guided by the
sure
rest
we
of the
can
council.
cope.
All right.
Well, I move that Councillor Hubel and Councillor Lemon be...
All right, I think we'll go that way then. All right, so could you please enter Councillor Lemon and Councillor Hubel in those 2 places? And then I will get Councillor Lemon. No, Councillor Cornish might be better. You move it. Otherwise, Councillor Lemon's moving yourself. Did you? Sorry, I apologise for this one. You did, Councillor Davis, so you've moved this
And I'm
point
happy
4.
to second.
And Councillor Cornish has seconded point 4. So all those in favour? No, there's no ballot. There's 2. There's just 2. Right.
It's not remunerated.
Carried. Against? Carried. Yes. Now, the next one is remake Councillor, I think that was Councillor Jones? Yeah. Councillor Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to make what I hope is quite a small change to the officer's recommendation, which is we have the proposal to extend some of these items in confidence for more than 4 years, which would put them beyond the next council. So I'm going to propose that we've got some that the officers have proposed extensions of 5, 6, 7 years. We change those to 4 years, with the principle being that whilst these are reviewed by the administration, I think it'd be a good principle that elected members got to review whether to retain things in confidence at least once per council term. And I have discussed with the CEO and staff whether this would be terribly burdensome, and the response was no, it wouldn't. So I think, you know, this has been in the press recently about sort of councils keeping items confidential. They are reviewed annually by the CEO, I think possibly even 6 monthly now. I just think it would be a good look for elected members to say, yep, once a council term at least, we will review this and make a decision. You know, there's nothing to stop us then extending for another 4 years, or we just decide things can be released. So I hope you'll support the motion.
Councillor Hubel, you're seconding?
Yes, thank you, Worship. I'll reserve my right to speak.
You may have to speak now because I've got no one else on the screen.
Oh.
Sorry? You suddenly...
I did. I thought you asked and
Okay.
I followed through.
Councillor Cornett.
I suppose I'm happy to support the motion, and 4 years, I think that's great governance that, you know, each elected body gets to actually see some of the details. I just wonder whether or not there should be a workshop too regarding some of these items and how we actually get them out in confidence. Like some of the issues, I think, that were long ago, whether or not they're still like active. Like it's been playing on my mind a little bit whether or not some letters shouldn't be released now in the public eye. And I suppose whether or not the next council could actually workshop, well, how do we go about that? What are the legal issues? Is it people being actually alive, people being actually employed is the issue, and their employability? You know, because we're keeping a lot of stuff in confidence because of personal reasons, and what is the trigger and the mechanism for that person for it to then be released? Because I don't want to, you know, they've been going in and out, like, well, not in and out, they've been retained for quite some time, and I just wonder whether or not we put our mind to what triggers on those personal ones for them to come out.
Now I have no one, unless somebody shoots in right now. So I said, Councillor Hubel. Okay. I think that's a good idea, and I'm glad you said for the new council, because I think it is appropriate that they learn the history before they make those sort of decisions. So I shall put it to the vote, unless, of course, Councillor Jones, you wish to sum up. All right, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Final recreation and sport strategy. Who was that? Councillor Davey.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'd just like to move an additional addition to this recommendation, that we're at 11.5. Sorry. One, that Council endorses the Recreation and Sports Strategy 2022-2026, comma, with the addition of, quotation mark, support for passive recreation, close quotation mark, at participation. So if we go to the diagram on page 146, I'm moving that we add support for encouragement of passive recreation, because there's so much work that's gone into this, and the administration have done so many versions, and we've had a huge amount of community consultation, with I think 363 responses to the consultation process. One of the consistent themes of that comment was the need to, while there is all this formalised sporting activity and lots of active sporting activity, there's the community are very keen that we maintain our open space, our natural environment, and our passive participation opportunities. They're also keen for shared pathways for pedestrians and cyclists, and they note we need to make facilities for these because there's interaction, can be quite dangerous. There's need to maintain support for unstructured sport and recreation, as most people in Burnside don't belong to clubs. But it has been noted these seem to get more support and facilities than those who undertake passive recreation. So there is that slight tension that's been noted between maintaining and reserving our open space and natural environment for use for everybody in an informal way and passive way, as well as for the structured ovals and clubs for formal activities. We've got a population of about 45,000 people. We've got 34 sporting and recreation groups. A recent survey, I believe, of the organisations, of the response of 63%, that reflected these clubs have 6,500 participants, which gives a small idea of the number of a portion of very active structured sporting activities, but the passive recreational opportunities aren't able to be quantified because there's so many of us like me who just walk our dogs or go for walks in the parks or along our streets. So that's the only reason I wanted to add at that diagram, which is fantastic and covers recreational and sporting facilities and programs that support and encourage an active, healthy community. Under the participation section, I think we just need to add support for, what have I put? Support for passive recreation, to acknowledge that is a key component of our community's activities. So I hope you'll support that. Thank you.
I just want to point out that in the definitions for the connected communities, it is actually clear that that is what the connected communities focus is, and that active recreation is a part of this particular policy. So I'm not sure, while I'll agree with your sentiment, I'm not sure that it should be going into the diagram, because that is actually counter to the definition of what this report, this strategy is about. That, I just want to point that out. I need a seconder. I don't have a seconder, so the motion lapses as it is. So I seek the original version, I think. Councillor Cornish.
I just got in there. I'll move the officer's recommendation, and just to briefly speak on that, and I'm sorry, Councillor Davey, I do tend to agree with Her Worship on this matter. Passive recreation is slightly different, and if it did get seconded, I would have asked you to describe what programs and facilities passive recreation users in the city would require, because that's what that policy is about, supporting with programs. So passive is more that you do it yourself without the need of us building infrastructure or for us to develop programs around it, because then it becomes a more structured environment. So this document's about the structured environment. We've got other documents that are about the unstructured environment. So, and I kind of get that. But I'm happy, very happy with the recreation and sports strategy, and commit it to the chamber.
Councillor Lemon, you wish to second?
Yes, I do, and I'll speak. And I too wish to pick up the idea of passive recreation. This recreation and sports strategy is something that we've been working on for a long time. It's come backwards and forwards a fair bit. It does actually reference passive recreation, and it references it in paragraph 8 at 8.7 about the mixed views, which could have been, which should be included in this strategy. But you know, it's art and craft. They're talking about art and craft, and then again on paragraph 42, where it says a very small minority raised opposition to the strategy because they were talking about a variety of things like open space. I mean, clearly not getting what a recreation and sports strategy is. They gave their views, but these are views that are dealt with in other places. So I'm very happy with this strategy as it is. I actually think it sees us in good stead for the next 5 years.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Perhaps I didn't present it very well. What I'm keen to see is, and I think we need to ensure, is that opportunities for passive recreation are maintained by maintaining our open space. So it's maintaining our parks and reserves, it's maintaining all of our good walking tracks, all of those facilities. So perhaps that's my mistake. I do think we need to have more emphasis on passive recreation, because I do think the structured recreation and the sporting clubs take all the emphasis and a huge amount of emphasis and money and funds, and there's a silent majority of passive recreational people doing arts and all those sort of things, and all of the facilities, using the facilities in our civic centre and library and all of those places. But it's the points that were made that the community have told us about being able to passively recreate. So just go for a walk, walk up to the shops, walk to the park, walk your dogs, whatever. And that's they're the silent majority, I believe, who just quietly do it, but they're not measured. So that's my concern about having the need for more emphasis, I believe, that we need on passive recreation.
Councillor Dord.
Yeah, I'd like to say a couple of words here. I've spoken to a number of sporting people in Burnside, and I kept saying this is a high-powered strategy, but they were really keen on the next step, which is the action plan. So I did understand that. Now, we had 72% in favour. Now, that's a landslide. That's more than a landslide. It's an avalanche, in my opinion. 72%. It's not a tsunami, but it's certainly a strong indication to me that we are heading in the right direction here. And we are talking about physically active as regards sport, recreation sport strategy. Connected communities is more about the things that Councillor Davies is talking about, I believe, and if you look at paragraph 35, it does explain that on page 144. The thing I also picked up is that if you look at those objectives, that it's typical of sport that facilities is a focus out of all of them. There is very high support for all the objectives, but if you look at facilities, that's got the highest number, which is not a surprise to me. But I do highly recommend, and I thank the staff, especially Belinda, for the work that she's done with this.
Thank you for mentioning that. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? All right, then I will go back to Councillor Cornish. No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Before we move to 11.7, I just wish to declare a perceived conflict of interest. I did declare it during the meeting when we had the discussion about the funding, but my husband was recently recently became a member of the committee, the Burnside Historical Society committee. But I will be staying for the debate because I did declare my interest and didn't discuss the issue of them getting grant money, and they didn't get grant money anyway, so, but I'm just making it clear. Right, so it was Councillor Davey again.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to move in accordance with the recommendation that Council endorse the following funding allocations for community grants and sponsorship for application in the 2022-23 financial year, pending final adoption of the 2022-2023 annual business plan and budget in June 2022. So this is grants to the Czech and Slovak Film Festival, Dulwich Rose Park United Parish, Glen Osmond Probus Club, Glenunga Rams Basketball Club, Kensington Cardinals Junior Football Club, Linden Park Community Garden Association Incorporated, Local Assembly of the Baha'i of Burnside, Norwood Community Creche, Open Space Contemporary Arts, the Overseas Chinese Association, Persian Poetry Nights, the Probus Club of Burnside, YMCA Inner North East Adelaide, Natania Huff on behalf of the Gers Road Street Art Project, Adelaide Eastern Suburbs Justices Group, Burnside Historical Society, Lions Club of Glenside and Sports United. Organisations for sponsorship, allocated funding for sponsorship are Norwood Bears Volleyball Club, the Old Collegians Rugby Football Club Incorporated, South Australian Athletics League, and at 2, Council endorses the $4,127 of unallocated 2022-2023 community grants and sponsorship budget to be added to the 2022-2023 quick response grants budget totalling $18,127. And that 3, note the updated acquittal status for the 2021-2022 financial year.
Is this an amendment?
No, this is the whole, as it's been written. So this is all, a lot of work's been undertaken by the staff and by the committee to determine the funding. We went down to fine detail about their connection to Burnside and the value of their applications. So they've been heavily scrutinised, and I think it's been a really fair and objective decision for the grants and the sponsorship. So hopefully you'll support this.
I seek a seconder. Councillor Hubel, you wish to speak?
No, Your Worship.
All right, then
Well, I'll defer it in case I need to later, but no.
I think you might. I know Councillor Dawes wishes to speak.
It was seconded, correct? Yep. Okay. No, I just, I want to say a couple of things here. I was the only male on this group, and it was a very robust group, I have to say, which is fantastic, because we really said what we thought. But there was a record number of applications, 29. It was heavily promoted by the staff through Farley, who's no longer with us. But I have to say, and I think Councillor Levin also said this, that because we had so many applications, we had to when we went through them individually, we were brain dead after doing 29 or more than 29, because some we didn't support. But there's a lot of effort that was put into looking at those applications, because it's not just one page. You've got to compare and so forth. So it's a robust group. So if any other council would like to be involved next time and they are seeking re-election, I'd say this is a great group to be on, because you learn so much about other groups that are working within Burnside.
And can I just add, before Councillor Davis, I just want to add too, that we sent Farley off with a huge amount of questions and follow-ups that she had to go to different clubs to get additional information, to answer questions, to validate comments that they made in order for this final report to come. So congratulations on all those efforts, because it actually has consolidated all of our concerns that were apparent during the meeting. So, Councillor Davis.
Well, thank you to all those members who did so much work. And I wasn't aware of the quantum, but yeah, I do know how time-consuming those panels can be, especially when you take days and days to do them. So thank you, Councillor Dawes in particular, and Farley, wherever she may be.
And now Belinda has that. Okay. Hubel, I have no one else on here, so do you wish to speak?
I will jump in. Nina Marnie, greet you all this evening. I was on this panel in 2019, so straight off the bat, I was very excited to be part of this. Kind of missed the call for readmission back in 2020, so I miss it. So at the next opportunity, I would love to be back involved, and hopefully you and I could work together, Councillor Dawes. Look, I was particularly pleased. You do see all these fringe groups, and I guess with all the, sorry for the rant, with all these elections that we've had lately, it kind of gives us cause. Don't leave the room. I might chat again. We think about. Our mind turns to the Constitution and Section 52, which tells us about the separation of powers in our government. What the federal government is all about. We had a federal election. What the state government does, we had a state election. We've got our local government elections coming up as well. It's a beautiful year for democracy, but we think about who is responsible for what, who does what for the community. There's a vast amount of needs that, by and large, met by various agencies, different levels of government, but also these grassroots, groups, these community groups that are largely volunteer-led, and the opportunity for us to enable them to work more efficiently, more effectively for, in some cases, their members specifically, but also for the community at large, is a wonderful thing for us to be doing. So it's nice to give people money, and it's nice to make people's lives a little bit easier. So this is a real warm, fuzzy one for me.
Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. Extremely well said, Councillor Hubel, because I want to add something else that sets us apart in local government. And yes, Peter Cornish, I will say it. What is so fantastic about this is we gave out our community grants long before we get into campaign mode, long before we're in electioneering mode. We do it every year, and we do it without condition. And I think that's fantastic about local government. This isn't relevant to any of us being elected or not elected. This is something we do for our community because we know it's the right thing to do, and that puts local government apart. So thank you for reminding me of that, about the separation of powers.
Right, Councillor Davey started it. I don't have any other names on, so do you wish to summarise now?
I'm just happy to summarise, and thank you everybody for your contribution. Yes, and the separation of powers is alive and well at local government. We've allocated a total of $36,949, our worthwhile committee, which took great pains to assess all of the applications for grants and sponsorship. And yes, it was way before any sort of timeline for election. There's no pork barrelling here. It's just good, earnest community organisations who deserve this funding and support. So hopefully you'll support it. Thank you.
Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Now we move to 11.8, Dog Management, Hazelwood Park Cafe. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a slight amendment to this motion. So I'll read it in total for all those at home. The recommendation is that Council declares, pursuant to Section 2463E of the Local Government Act 1999 and Clause 5.2 of Bylaw 5 Dogs, the following area of local government land as a dog on leash area. All land used as the external dining area associated with the George Bolton Swimming Centre Kiosk Cafe, and all land outside the perimeter of the pool area, which is within 10 metres of the outer edge of the external dining area associated with the George Bolton Swimming Centre Kiosk and Cafe. And a third point, that Council install explanatory signage at the cafe and 4 separately located single dog tethering stations in appropriate shady areas adjacent to the cafe, in consultation with the proprietor, local ward councillors, and in accordance with our responsibilities under the State Heritage Act. I thank the staff for this, all the work they've done on this matter. Before reading the report, as the local councillor, I had no inkling of the apparent extent of problems with the dogs of patrons at the very busy swimming pool cafe. Well, it has highs and lows. Can be very busy at times. It's very popular with locals, local dog walkers, and pool users, parents and kids. So it's a huge range of people. I'm happy to support the new requirement to leash dogs here, but as the cafe area is often quite congested, and for the reasons outlined in paragraph 3.4 on page 456, I believe that we must provide an alternative area nearby for owners to tie their dogs. Otherwise, even if on leash and attached to their tables, this will add to the congestion in the cafes, as the tables are located quite closely. So the complaints have been that dogs have been just roaming and get under people's feet. They jump up on tables. They've been entering the kitchen, weeing on the area, and worse, and aggravating and attacking other dogs. So, and that's fine. I can understand that we need to bring in some formalised containment. But there are a huge number of patrons who walk their dogs and then go to the cafe, and we need to then make provision for them to tie their dogs while they have a coffee or a meal. I think it's entirely reasonable that we provide some tether stations around separately so that, you know, the dogs aren't all sitting on top of each other. Because I think the risk assessment didn't show, but there is a risk to the cafe that they will lose a lot of their business if we don't do that. So I think it'll support the operation of the cafe, make it more efficient and pleasant for those who don't like dogs roaming around. And I don't want to see them lose the considerable patronage of the dog walkers if there's no provision made for their pets. So there's lots of shady areas around that dogs can be tied to. If they've just had a walk, they'll be lying there quite happily, as long as they've got sight of their owner and their owner can see them. As I said, the nuisance outlined in the report is not acceptable, and I think with some signage to explain it and all of this in place before the new pool season opens, hopefully the dog owners will be very happy and happy to continue to use the cafe. Otherwise, there's lots of local cafes that people are walking to where their dogs are accommodated. We've got Ballabooster and the Lockwood Cafe and Base Camp. Thank you.
Councillor Hubel.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, very, very happy to second this, and I am personally, little Dolly and myself are frequent users of this cafe, and yeah, there is a there's a real divide between responsible and irresponsible dog walking and dog ownership within the city, and I think Burnside, Hazelwood Park, that really comes to the fore in this this cafe, which really has blown up, I think, this last summer in terms of its popularity. It is a tightly run ship with it's a really good product, and I just think it's becoming more and more attractive. You know, with Hazelwood Park being an off-leash area, it's a very attractive place for dog walkers, but the attraction of that cafe makes it a bit more of a destination spot for non-dog walkers. And any decision we make is we're balancing the rights of one group with another competing interests. So there's the right for people to enjoy the recreation of walking their dog off lead, but there's also the right of people who have dog phobias to feel safe and secure in our public spaces. So that balance, and it's I think this is exactly the same rationale that we use when we talk about dog leash areas around playgrounds. You know, a lot of the same rationale applies here. So this is a good thing to do. I didn't necessarily think that tethering stations was necessary. I kind of put my hand up to second this before I realised there was that addition going to be happening. But look, I'm not opposed to it, so very happy for that to be included. So hopefully this can further improve what is a wonderful jewel in the crown of the crown.
Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I won't be supporting this amendment because of the tethering. This report, which is only a few pages long, but from paragraph 28, including 29 and 30, the idea of tethering actually has crossed the minds of the people who wrote this report, and it is said in this that it'll only be considered following a review of the operation of the new control if the review reveals a demand. Now, there's no costings in this. I don't know how much it's going to cost to put dog tethering. You know, and this is sticking stakes in under our trees if you want a shady area. And for me, putting a dog on a lead, and I've seen Councillor Hubel's dog. Councillor Hubel's dog on a lead would sit on his feet while he was sitting there having a coffee, and the dog would be completely under control. And I think that putting a dog on a lead puts it under control. I don't think you need tethering stations for a dog, because if the dog needs to be tethered elsewhere, then it's clearly not under control. And if it's not under control, then, well, I don't know what you do if they're not under control. You would ask those people to take their dogs and put them under control. So Just putting them on a lead and having them sit under the table or tethering them to a chair or you know, your handbag or your arm should be enough in a cafe for a dog without us having to go to the expense and the digging up bits of the park to put in tethering when we don't know whether or not it's needed at this stage. This is going to be up for review after a season. So I think this is getting a bit ahead of ourselves. I agree that the dogs can be on leads. I don't agree that we need tethering right now. And given that only 20% of residents own a dog, that is catering to what I consider a small minority. 1 in 5 households have a dog. So tethering, maybe, but let's look at it in 12 months' time to see whether it's worthwhile.
I press the button.
Councillor Piggott.
Thank you. A question. Can I just ask, do we have examples of dog tethering elsewhere in the council? And, well, perhaps I may have a follow-up question.
Through Madam Mayor, if I can refer that to Mr Cooper.
Through the Mayor, thanks for the question. Yes, we do have one other example. It's outside of the Civic Centre, and it's like a metal ring, and it's got dogs written on the top of it, so just stuck into the ground.
And dogs can read that, can they, mate?
Well, hopefully their owners can.
Oh, the owners can. So the purpose of that, presumably, is to allow me to go into the library and leave my dog outside. Is that what happens? Right. Do we have any issues with it? Is it used? Do we know? No, so there's no, I mean, I guess where I was going is what issues do we see with the dog tethering? Was probably where I was going, given my ignorance on the subject.
Through Madam Mayor, if I can refer that back to Mr Cooper.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, as the report states, we would have to be very careful about the positioning of such tethers because we don't want to create tripping hazards for the public. We also need to ensure that it doesn't create a mowing obstruction for anyone mowing the grass areas. And of course, we don't want to damage any turf or irrigation systems that will be nearby. So that's really why we were saying, look, if we do consider this, if it is necessary, we would need to consider those factors very carefully.
Councillor Turnbull. If you've got any further questions later, okay.
I just have one question of clarification. Does the 10-metre zone start from the counter, or it says the outer area, is that where the tables and chairs finish? And that's where 10 metres from there. Okay, so the second question I've got is, they've said they'll put an A-frame sign up, that'll be very useful, but will there be lines painted around so that people know, right, got to put the dog on a lead now, otherwise they'll ignore it? I've been there many, many times, and they do.
Yes, they do.
Through Madam Mayor, I'll just get some clarification from Mr Cooper.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, no plans to mark out the area as such, 10 metres from the edge. The main point here is to educate and, if necessary through signage, advise all patrons that the area where the tables and chairs are under the veranda there for the cafe, that's the area in particular we want to ensure that dogs are on leash. So signage will be applied, education will be used through the rangers to make sure that that message is clear. And you know, we work very closely with the community, and our approach is to counsel and educate rather than go to expiation. So that is the approach that we would take.
Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, look, when you make a change like this, where we've now got a new dog on leash area, I always think, well, what could happen, right? And you should allow, as what Councillor Lemon said, I'm probably on what she's saying, as to what the effect of this dog on leash area will be. And it might be that we need 10 single dog tethering areas or whatever it is, but I think we should see what happens. I do agree with Councillor Turnbull, though, putting something on the ground, because I can sense that most dog owners won't know what's happening, even though we've got signs there. People don't read signs, I'm sorry to tell you, unless it's a sign telling you about the natural history of the area or something like that. So, yeah, I would wait for the demand on this one. I understand where Councillor Davies is coming from, but we're guessing what could happen. And when we do that, we unfortunately make mistakes.
Councillor Cornish.
I'll just ask a question first. With regards to the tethering station outside the Civic Centre, how many are there? Is it just one or are there multiple? It's just one for the library and Civic Centre. Okay, I'm going to offer an amendment, if I can, to item 2, that, and Councillor Davey might take it on or she might not, but between cafe and 4, we add up to 4 separately located single dog tethering stations. So we can maybe phase them in one at a time. Are you okay with up to 4? And that gives the administration some chance to put in one, see how it goes, if there's an appropriate area, and then if there's need for another one, they can put in another one at a later stage and assess that. Well, well, possibly, but it gives them the okay to actually put up to 4.
And they use the bike racks and the seats and all sorts of other things out in front of the Civic Centre to tie up their dogs anyway. But not as many dogs go there as they do the cafe.
Okay, thanks.
Next is Councillor Turnbull.
Am I able to speak again? Yes. Thank you.
Questions?
I have 2 questions. And now, yeah, thank you. I use that park a lot with my dog, and you hear people, those dogs are very important to people. They call them Dirhams, Bubba, Sweetie Pie, Cutie Pie. You hear it all the time. Now, they are very entitled dogs, a lot of them, and I don't think that tethering is going to be the answer originally, because they'll bark because they haven't got their mummy with them, and really it's very important. So I would say I would vote that leave it for one season, see how it goes, and then put the tethering stations in if needed. And I like the idea of 1 to 4 too. And honestly, it is, on a Saturday morning there, it's rather dreadful. You've got your slobbery dogs wanting to be patted. They're gorgeous dogs, but they're not in the right place at the right time. So I think the 23 complaints is minimal. It's a wonder there weren't more. So for me, I'd say tripping hazard, get the dogs out, but leave the tethering bit for another time to see how it goes. But it's a good idea.
Councillor Piggott.
I'm going to weigh in on the side of no tethering as well. I'm not a dog person, but it strikes me that at the moment I'm there having my coffee and letting my dog do whatever it likes. You're now asking me to put it on a leash and keep it with me. And if that's not satisfactory, then I'm not sure whether tying it up to a tree, 10 metres away is going to be particularly satisfactory either. So I feel the recommendation was reasonable. They clearly have considered the tethering. It might have its time. The up to 4, I think that's awkward. If they choose 0, there'll be I would be crying foul if it was my motion. So I think we should take that out as an option, and we should go back to the officer's recommendation. Would be my position.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? All right, then I will go back to Councillor Davey.
Thank you. As has been outlined under finance, dog tethering stations are costed at $400 each, and they're similar to the ones we put for bike racks. We've got bike racks all over the place. I think we've got to start controlling dogs and offering tethering stations, because for people who know dogs and walk dogs, dogs are tied all around the swimming centre for people going into the swimming pool. So I think it's entirely reasonable that we provide some tethering stations if we're changing a significant usage of this cafe. It's not reasonable, for those who've been to the cafe and been there at busy times, it's not reasonable to have 1 or 2 dogs tied up to a table or the chair in this small cafe. That is where the tripping hazard will be found, as dogs will after a while stand up and possibly and move around, and they'll also be barking at the interaction with dogs next door. It is far better if we're having a dogs on leash area to make provision for them outside the 10-metre area. And I do not believe that reasonably well-trained dogs, which most dogs in Burnside are, once they've had a walk and they've settled down and they can see their owner having a coffee, even though they're tied up, they'll be fine. So I think the other note I'm making is that there's been no community consultation on this move at all. So I think we've got to facilitate what is a very, Councillor Hubel has outlined the dog traffic in Hazelwood Park. Councillor Turnbull has too. I know it too. It is considerable. These are our ratepayers and residents. Some of them are from out of our area, but most of them are Burnside residents, and I think there'll be reputational damage to us if we make this change and don't make provision for the dogs. So I appreciate Councillor Cornish's amendment. I think this is entirely reasonable, and hopefully you'll support this and show that we are caring for our community, our lovely local cafe, our lovely park, and making the most of changing the situation, but making the most of it for everybody and their dogs. So hopefully you'll support this. Thank you.
I shall put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? The motion is lost and a division has been called, so please stand those who voted for. Councillor Cornish, Davey and Hubel. Those against? Councillors Piggott, Davis, Lemon, Turnbull, Dawes and Jones. Thank you very much. Now, I think that's all the reports. Sorry, Councillor Davis? Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Hubel already had it. So, but you are very welcome to say.
I have the call, so I'd like to move the officer's recommendation, Your Worship.
Do you wish to say anything else?
No.
No. And Councillor Davis, you're happy to second it?
Outraged.
Do you wish to speak?
That was me speaking.
That was it, okay. All right, then I'll put it to the vote. Oh, I'm sorry, there's someone who wants to speak.
Yeah, I'd actually like to, believe it or not, offer an amendment if I can. I'm sorry, no, I do actually think that the signage is an important component from Councillor Davies' previous motion, that we actually need to tell people that we're doing it and why. So I'd like to incorporate in there something about some signage around the centre, if I could.
I think that is actually very important, because it's actually very difficult for the people who run the cafe to maintain and to explain that. So that is, I think, a really important thing. And I don't even mind the idea that was mentioned earlier about the painted line too, or some dotted markers would be useful too. I don't know. Sorry? I'm just leaving it with Chris to check over there. Question.
Through Madam Mayor, I'll just refer to Mr Cooper. Yeah. I'm certainly happy for clarity, Madam Mayor, to make it very clear. And I think that'll be good in terms of the minutes for our residents to see that.
I do think it's important that it's added, because if we're making a change to it needs to be authorised in that manner. And then when people question the proprietor of the cafe, or they question anyone from council, any of the elected members, for example, like Councillor Davey or Turnbull, who are there regularly, and me, because I'm there all the time in the summer for the pool as well, and Councillor Hubel, then they have a justification that it's been passed by council. And with signage. Yeah. Yeah, but I think Chris would like to have it specified in the motion.
I believe mover and seconder are on board with it.
Yeah, so have you got something to add? Do you want to put something? Is something happening?
If they're happy for a
Okay, good.
variation to their original motion, I'm
Right.
happy to take that on there.
Okay,
So it's no
You're happy
longer
with
an
that?
amendment, it's a variation
Right.
because the mover and seconder have now accepted it. Thanks.
fine.
Cool.
Okay.
Through Madam Mayor, just to clarify what signage you're seeking,
So now we
because there's
can
two
specify
types.
what
One
it
is
says.
notification signage, where we're just saying this is a dog on leash area, versus explanatory signage, which is going into detail about why.
Get rid of explanatory.
So it's,
Don't want to explain.
I feel you just want notification.
Use your best judgment.
We also have some other ways of doing it through Burnside highlights, through the Herald article as well, and the focus.
We're debating it again. Let's just get this motion
Yep.
through, get on to the next, rest of the meeting. That's the motion.
Happy with it?
Yeah.
Do you want me,
Except it says cafe twice.
do you want me to second?
Signage at the cafe,
No, I've already seconded.
in the swimming pool area, at the swimming centre.
Won't be like this on Adelaide.
Right.
That would be worse.
Right, Councillor Davey, you're happy with that? Who, I can't remember who seconded it, was Councillor Hubel. Councillor Hubel, you're happy with that too? All right. Then
So
is there
who's-
anyone
who's-
else who wishes to speak on this?
This was moved
All
to
right,
you
then-
by Davis.
Councillor Davey, you happy if I just put the motion now?
So I'm not sure if what I've seconded now, so.
No, it's just the
or have
addition
I
of the council install signage at the cafe.
No.
And it's-
Councillor Hugh moved the motion. I seconded the motion.
Sorry, I
Councillor
apologise.
Cornish proposed a variation which was adopted by the mover and seconder.
Yes,
Means Councillor Davies is not a part.
not a part of it. Okay, so it's councillor. All right. So councillor Hubel and Davis have this according to the top of the motion. Council install signage at the cafe.
As well.
Could we, maybe the word explanatory signage?
I suppose with your variation.
Let it go, I'm going to let it go. Okay. All right. Councillor Jones, you wish to speak? No, Councillor Davey. I think Councillor Davey actually was on the screen before you, Councillor Jones. Right, Councillor Davey.
Shit. Thank you. I know it is getting a bit confusing. I thank you, Councillor Cornish, for at least indicating that we need some signage. I'll say again, I think it's very regrettable that we don't have any tethering stations. I think we're doing our community a disservice, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Now, I'm going to put the motion, Councillor Jones. I don't know that you, but if you wish to move the motion be put. All right, so I am going to put the motion, unless anyone objects to that. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Now we move to questions on notice, and though answers to those questions have been provided to you, I believe. Is that correct? So now we'll move to motions on notice, and the first one is 13.1, Councillor Davey, the fencing needs and style assessment, Hazelwood Park.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This motion tonight is regarding. You want me to wait?
No, sorry, no, you're fine. Apologies, you start.
Is about fencing needs and style assessment in Hazelwood Park. My motion is that a report be brought to Council by 9th of August, or I'm happy for the second meeting in August, but before the caretaker period, which in consideration of the principles of the Hazelwood Park Conservation Management Plan, and could you also add, and State Heritage Act after Management Plan? The first para, Bronnie. And State Heritage Act addresses the following. a risk assessment of safety aspects to identify the fencing needed to protect park users from vehicular and bicycle traffic, an assessment of proposed fencing styles in line with those present in other City of Burnside parks and reserves to replace the existing aged permapine fencing, and a risk assessment to identify if perimeter fencing is needed to protect the park from unauthorised vehicle entry or vandalism of grassed areas or vegetation, and community consultation process for any recommendations proposed. So I've moved this tonight based on Hazelwood Park's status as a state heritage park. I think it's timely that a holistic review of the fencing needs is undertaken there. I apologise for not referring to the State Heritage Act initially in my motional notice. The current proposal to extend the heavy style of fencing, which was approved originally in 2011, specifically to protect children using the play space adjacent to the very busiest section of the car park, which is that corner of the play space on the corner of Howard Terrace and Davenport Terrace, has been very effective. We've had no problems with it, and the children have been protected from running out onto that busy area. And it, in effect, the original fence lasted 10 years and has recently been replaced. However, it's not, I believe, appropriate to just extend this type of fencing, even using environmentally sustainable materials, as a style suitable for Hazelwood Park. There are hundreds of metres of Hazelwood Park boundaries, some of which require replacement of the very old, dated and ugly permapine fencing, which has been there for eons. All the other parks and reserves in Burnside utilise bollards to define their boundaries where they are necessary. So examples that spring to mind are Tusmore Park on Stirling Street at Tusmore and Menula Reserve. These define the boundaries and are, I believe, suitable to deflect or block vehicle entry, for safety of people and to protect infrastructure in the park. The current community engagement on the Hazelwood Park fencing does not present this option, and there is confusion in the community as it seems to present a fait accompli. It also is not consistent with the Hazelwood Park Conservation Management Plan, which does give other options for fencing, and I was not involved in nor aware that the community consultation was being released while we were having discussions on the fencing. So subsequently I was advised by the CEO that the fencing, which had apparently already been ordered, could be used elsewhere in the City of Burnside. So I don't see it as an imperative that we need to be installing it in Hazelwood Park. My major concern is that this type of fencing becomes the norm for Hazelwood Park, as an extension of it from the protection of the actual playground sets a precedent which will be used for all future fencing. So to my mind it is heavy duty, it's not necessary, and it's inconsistent with the protection that other parks have, both for their users in the park, you know, picnickers and people playing as they do in Tusmore Park. They have bollard protection to stop traffic intervening on the park. And I think this is unwarranted. I think we need a holistic review before we install any other sorts of fencing. So that's what I'm asking for your support for tonight, please.
I seek a seconder. Councillor Turnbull, wish to speak?
My right to speak.
Councillor Pickett? Sorry, Councillor Cornish got in first.
Thank you, Worship. I noticed that the consultation is still undergoing and we're yet to actually get feedback from the community on the proposed extension of what's around the Wombat Waterhole, that style of fencing. I do understand Councillor Davies' concerns in terms of this area and you know, people with prams, people with, you know, bikes that want to go, oh, that was bad of me. People with bikes, people with prams, they'll probably want to get into the park as quickly as possible rather than corral in down to a footpath or, a pathway, which we do up in that area. They just want to get onto the grass as quickly as possible. I have been going through the plans and stuff. I just wonder whether or not, though, I think the motion might be a little overkill or a bit premature in terms of I'd like to actually see the feedback from the community first as to whether or not they'd accept it or not. It seems like a lot to actually ask for a report, basic with risk assessment and all this sort of stuff and the proposed fencing styles when it's not a fait accompli just yet, I don't think. So I'm probably on the edge of not voting for it at the moment because I'd like to actually see what comes back from the consultation and whether or not the local community have said, no, it's not appropriate for this end of the car park in the first instance. So, but I actually do sympathise and think that some bollards around there is probably a more appropriate style so that people can access the park much faster from the backs of their cars with, little bikes and scooters or whatever, and stuff. So, but I'm not going to support the motion as it stands.
CEO wishes to comment.
Through Madam Mayor, if I could just provide a slight clarification. The proposal is that every 6 metres there's quite a wide opening, so it's not a continuous fence the whole way. So just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Now, Councillor Pick.
I've got a couple of questions, if I may, Lady Mayor. Could someone tell me what does the Conservation Management Plan say about fencing? In short.
Through Madam Mayor, if I can get Mr. Cant to give us that insight.
Through the Mayor, the Conservation Management Plan talks about existing fencing and barriers, and it also refers to fencing and barrier opportunities. The area in question is actually silent within the Conservation and Management Plan. The area for investigation of bollards is actually west to the existing boom gate with the other car park there, and also along Howard Terrace as well. So that's where the Conservation Management Plan considers bollards. That's why, with the replacement of the permapine posts, we envisaged that we would extend that existing fence line down to the boom gate to provide consistency.
Thank you. My second question is, and you partly answered it maybe, but what are our plans for the rest of the area in regard to fencing? Do we have, I understand what was just told to me from the management plan, so perhaps that is the answer, but is there an intention to get going on all the rest in the foreseeable future?
So, through Madam Mayor, and I'll stand corrected if I get this wrong, our intention is that for those areas, as Mr. Cant's just alluded to, we would be considering possibly bollard-style fencing rather than, or bollard-style treatments, rather than continuation of this treatment we're talking about this evening.
Can I just add to that as well? Sorry. Just to absolutely be clear, it's investigate bollards and garden bed barriers at those locations, and along Greenhill Road, investigate fence and hedge.
Right. Thank you.
Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you, Mayor. That was my point, that in 2016 the Conservation Management Plan said to prevent vehicle access, etc., have a combination of bollards and garden bed barriers. Now, that fence that's there around the waterhole is great for kids. There's no need to have that all the way down, for me, because hardly anyone ever parks there. Only the people who they want to avoid the other dog walkers, so they park there so they can go off by themselves. And really, it's not really a safety issue. And the future fencing worries me. What's going to happen from the boom gate down? Those daggy pine posts there, if anyone sits on them, they splinter and fall. So they'll be next, obviously, and we don't want to have different sorts of fencing. Bollards have worked efficiently at Newland Park Reserve. They're fabulous. They look neat and tidy. You can walk through them easily. Kids can ride their bikes through them, and it's all the same, and it really looks good. So I would like to see an option for a plan here, and with the costings in it too, because nothing's been said about costing. How much do bollards cost compared with a rail and a post fence? Could I ask that question, please? How much is there a pricing on this? A difference in pricing?
Through the Mayor, one thing I can say about bollards is it's more footing so required, so there's potential more root damage. But in terms of the costings, I don't know if Mr. Cant has any figures at hand.
No, I don't have the figures at hand for the bollards. We've got the cost for the contract for the fencing.
Councillor Dawes.
Yeah, there we are. Okay. Oh, thank you. Now, the CEO just sent this around, which we got via email, and it shows the fence that's being proposed. My question is that under the State Heritage Act, is there a stipulation or whatever, what we can use in a state heritage park? Would this fence that we are proposing satisfy those requirements?
Through me, the short answer is we wouldn't have proposed it if it didn't, but I'll get a clearer answer from Mr. Cant.
Through the Mayor, that is correct. They already have this existing style of fence in situ, which would have been approved at the time.
Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I have some real problems with this motion also, and one of them is I'm actually not sure how long that blue line is on this. Can anybody tell me?
Through Madam Mayor, Mr. Cant. Okay.
No? It's not very long because you can see that, yeah. So I've actually got no problems with that. I think that where you've got a car park, and I've seen that car park, and I've seen the sort of people that park in that car park, and I think that whilst bollards might be a pretty idea, the fence that I can see here, which is around the current playground, is robust. So there's two issues for me with this fence. One is a car driver can see it easily, and it may not be that they see a bollard or even recognise that there's a garden bed that's supposed to be keeping them out. So car drivers will in fact park back. The other issue that I like particularly, well, the other two issues about this fence is it is a natural extension of the one around the playground, so you haven't got bitsy stuff going on around the corner and down the street. And the third issue is it's recycled material. This is fantastic that we're using recycled material. We're not using permapalm, we're not using new stuff, we're not using a big lump of concrete that you dig down in the ground and potentially actually damage roots of some of the trees that are quite close to the car park. So I really like all those things. I'm further a bit disturbed that we're actually making a decision about this before we get back the results of our community engagement. And I don't think we should be doing that. I actually think that makes a joke of community engagement, and I'm surprised that Councillor Davey is even considering that, given her penchant for engagement at all times. And finally, I would say this, and I don't know whether I read it wrong, but everybody was talking about other fencing for Hazelwood Park. I'd say to you, on this document that we all have, which is the engagement document, it says, extending the fence in this location is proposed given the proximity of this area to both the playground and the car park. Makes sense. There are currently no plans to provide additional fencing further around Hazelwood Park. So am I the only one that read that? Because we're talking about other things now. We're talking about other style of park. There are no plans. Well, there are no plans. So this is the only fencing that's going up, because according to this, unless we're lying to our people, there are no plans. So I'm not averse to this for all the reasons I stated.
Councillor Piggott.
Oh. Could I have a crack at an amendment? Could I put in under a risk assessment, provide, the fourth paragraph, please. So we might have to bump and, I guess. I'd like to provide for Council's consideration final position in regard to fencing. I'd like another word for fencing around the entire park. And perhaps if I explain, perhaps you'll help me with the words, maybe. But it strikes me the issue here is coming up is the fact that Councillor Lemon expressed the fact that it says there's no plans for future fencing. The fact is, though, at some point we are going to need to sort out a good chunk of that. As you get further west, the current permapine is probably worthy of replacement. And so we're doing this in isolation, and so I think that's the reason for the concern. Whereas if council had a position on Hazelwood Park generally in terms of whether we needed to put a fence in, and if we needed, the words were there, whether we required protection or that we didn't, and if we did, what that would be. I think that's what we need, is ultimately to look at that in holistically, and then that will inform, along with the consultation in regard to this, what we do with that first bit. But at the moment we've just picked one bit and we're doing that bit. Suspicion is it's going to be the whole park, rightly or wrongly, and we've been silent on the subject. So that's what I was looking to do.
Okay. So through Madam Mayor, I just did a couple of questions to get my head in the correct space. So the third dot point there talks about to protect the park. So I'm assuming that's Hazelwood Park. So that's not covering your thoughts?
Oh, okay. Perhaps that's the question I should have asked. So will this report give me on the 9th of August a complete view of where council's going to go in regard to separating the park from outside of the park? Will it?
So
is that what it will do?
So my interpretation, and I'll see if this aligns with Councillor Davis' thoughts, reading that is that Councillor Davis is trying to understand holistically Hazelwood Park rather than just this section that's talked about in the consultation. Is that correct, Councillor Davis? Right. Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's my interpretation.
So she's trying to, and
nothing to do with this motion at all.
well, no, it does. But that motion will deliver that. Do you feel? If it gets up on August 9, we'll be thrashing it out around what you as administration feel it should be across the whole thing. Not necessarily doing it straight away, but that's what it's going to be.
That's certainly, if this is up, that's certainly what I'll deliver.
Okay. I don't know how much of my 3 minutes I used in doing that, Lady Mayor, but I will, if given the opportunity, speak for the motion. Can I forward, John? Go on. Thank you. I think that's where it's. I mean, I do accept. I don't have a problem with what's gone before, but I can sort of see where we're at as well and where it's coming from. There's a suspicion that it's gone from the playground to the next bit, and good chance it'll keep going to the next bit and the next bit and the next bit. That against Councillor Turnbull's view that certainly, and others, that the permapine should be replaced sooner rather than later, and it certainly has been there a long time, and it probably doesn't, apart from practically, do a lot for the park. So I think if we could, if the consultation's out there and we will get results from that, maybe it inform this process to a certain extent. But I think if we could look at the whole park in holistically as to what council was going to do with it, then it would be a much more informed decision to start on the process and do this first bit of fencing. So I do support, I request the words provide for council's consideration actually come back out. I'm sorry about that little diversion. But I do think it is something that's worthy of doing, and I support the motion.
Councillor Davey, you have a question?
Thank you. Yes, I have a question just following on from Councillor Pickett's queries. I did provide a photo with the motion on notice. It's on page 485, attachment A, and it's the northwestern view of the permapine that we're talking about. So this is another aspect of the park, and it's actually runs parallel to Howard Terrace in Hazelwood Park, and it's an area of permapine that's needed replacing for years. It protects, it's not necessary essentially to protect the children in the car park, but it's necessary to protect the park from cars that veer onto it. So
we're getting to the question, Councillor.
What is intended to replace that? This was an illustration of other fencing that needs replacing. So what's the administration's view of when that needs replacing?
Through you, Madam Mayor, if I can refer that to Mr Cant.
Through the Mayor, I'll have to take that on notice. I'm not familiar with that fence myself, so I would have to assess it and provide you that on notice.
Councillor Dawes?
Right. So let me get right. Councillor Pickett didn't move the amendment in the end. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, whatever.
No.
I got lost of all that. I'm sorry, Councillor Pickett. Yeah, look, there is, what I'd like, I think there is something in this, but I am one that wants to seek community responses, and we have gotten to the 30th of June, the opportunity here to see what the community think about this fence. So I'll probably, with Councillor Cornish here, that I'd love to get those results first, and it will be before the caretaker period, and we can look at this again. But at the moment, I understand where Councillor Davis is coming from, because if you look at page 48 of the management plan, it only talks about bollards and garden bed barriers. And we all got a copy of that via email today, was it, or last night? 11 p.m. last night. You must be working late, Councillor Davey. But we got that last night, and you can look at that and you say, where does it mention a fence like we've been shown here? It doesn't mention that. But I do like that fence that's there. I must admit, I do like it. But I'd love to get the community response first. So I will say no at this stage and wait for that, and we can come back to that in July.
Councillor Hubel?
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, I might be causing some controversy here, but I think that these permapine fences are getting a bit of an unfair criticism. I quite like them, personally. I think they do the job of stopping cars getting through, and that's really essentially the main purpose, where they are. I think around the playground we need a little bit more, because I think it's reasonable to assume that you've got children being a little bit more free range, which is what we want. Free range children is good. But further, no, it's a thing. Hey. And look, on these permapine fences, you walk along them and you jump between them. You sit on them. They're actually a wonderful thing, and I think we should have more permapine fencing like we can see on attachment A of Councillor Davies' report. That's my opinion, but I do want to hear about the community engagement results about this current proposal to extend the current type of fencing along before we do any more. So I will vote against this. I'm sorry, Councillor Davey, but I think if this motion was brought back alongside the results of this consultation, I think the landscape would be a little bit different in my mind.
Councillor Davis?
I don't want to cause offence. Can I ask a question first? Yes. When do you think this consultation finishes on the 30th of June? When will you have the results back for that? Will you be able to combine the results from this with this report? You got like 2 weeks, basically.
Yeah. Through Madam Mayor, I just need to check with Mr Cant on that one.
Yeah, but it only comes back on the...
Through the Mayor, we could provide the results of this consultation. We wouldn't expect to get a significant amount of responses quite quickly back to Council. So by the end of July, early August, we could provide Council with those results.
Okay. So when we have, if we have the result, this motion and the results we'll have in our hands at the same time. So Humphrey. Is that? So are you speaking now? That's a question.
Well, through Madam Mayor, well, the commitment is to bring the results of this survey back to Council as soon as possible. So if this gets up this evening, they may line up. Yeah.
Okay. When's caretaker?
6th of September.
6th of September.
Caretaker commences.
Councillor Jones?
Oh, okay. I was going to speak to him. Not sure. Can I speak to it?
Councillor Davis, you can turn your microphone off.
No.
Oh, you're going to speak now? Sorry. Yeah, you can speak after he's asked questions.
Who says? What does it say then, Governor?
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Davis.
I turned it off. Can I?
Yes, you can. We've got no rules. I'll check with governance. It happens all the time. People ask questions. Okay, official rule is you do have to re-queue after questions. Okay, so Councillor Jones, off you go.
Councillor Davies,
I've got another question. I've been waiting for ages. So it's my turn.
No, Councillor Jones was up at the top of the list. Sorry, Councillor Jones was up at the top of the list.
I haven't touched this. I've had it.
Councillor Jones, just let him do it.
Yeah, and lost his place because he's
Okay,
been told
go
he
ahead.
couldn't speak.
So,
He has to speak.
who else is on your list?
Do I get to call that?
Cornish, Higgett, Davis,
What about me? Aren't I on it?
Yeah, so we will turn off. You go first, Jane goes second, I go third, Grant goes fourth,
No, I got it again.
Councillor Davies goes fifth. Go.
I move that the question be adjourned until the 23rd of August meeting. It's formal motion.
he can make. I'm getting. Well, I've got some comments that have been ignored totally by the group tonight that I need to mention too. He's allowed to do that as long as he's got a seconder. So I seek a seconder. No seconder. Sorry, Councillor Jones. Is Councillor Davies.
Thank you. Thank you. My question is, with this motion, it was intended that this community engagement would be part of it. That was implied, but because I knew that was undertaken, would this not form part of this motion, or does the when was the report coming back to us as a result of this consultation, or was it not coming back to council?
Through you, Madam Mayor, this was going to be coming back to council for decision, and as soon as possible, following the conclusion of the consultation.
Councillor Cornish.
My question is, I suppose, regarding the timing of the 9th of August in this report. I think there's a lot of information in this report being asked, like risk assessments aren't an easy thing to do. Is the administration, can they provide it by that time frame?
Yeah, I was going to propose a variation before September. What of this whole report presented by the Commission of Consultation?
Through you, Madam Mayor, can we just seek clarity on the date we want in this motion, please?
Well, I was going to propose a variation, if the mover and seconder accepted, that to change 9th August to before September.
I'll be happy with that.
Before September, rather than putting in caretaker.
Are you comfortable with that, Councillor Turnbull?
If we put before caretaker next. Yes, if that's the next meeting, the 23rd.
Before September. That's the last meeting.
That's the last meeting before caretaker. Yes, I'm happy with that.
All right. Are you comfortable, Councillor Turnbull? Okay. So,
I'm still waiting for an answer to my question as to whether or not you can now still provide this report by the 23rd of August.
So, yes, Madam Mayor, if I can refer that to Mr. Cant.
Through the Mayor, we will certainly do our best to return this report by that time should Council endorse this motion. We will refer to the Conservation Management Plan, and we will, as part of that process, provide assessment of what Council has previously endorsed, and will provide options of what can be done throughout, around the park at that point. So yes, we will do our best to bring it back by that time.
Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Okay. Yeah, I will support this motion. You should have the result, if we don't do this now, it won't happen. If you don't vote for this motion, you lose your opportunity completely to get this report. Councillor Davey is seeking, there's currently a community consultation that's gone out. We will have those results by 30 June. This gives the Council Administration a month to get those results together, and then 2 weeks to put in a report to us by the end of August. That would essentially be our last meeting where we can make that decision. I think it's more than fair enough. Councillor Davey is the ward councillor for this area. She's asking for a holistic understanding of what fences should, or what is proposed to be going to Hazelwood Park. It's perhaps not the most clear motion, but this will give the council the ability to go and consider holistically what Hazelwood Park would look like from a fencing point of view. So I think it's entirely reasonable that we support this motion, and I believe we'll have all the information on the table at that time. And if we don't, well, that'll be a matter for the next council. But I hope that you support this motion. It's, as the ward councillor, she's seeking a report on her own ward about fencing and supporting her local residents. So I see no reason why we shouldn't support it.
I would actually like to speak now because it's really important. I'm a user of that park all summer long. Saturdays and Sundays are the busiest times. And the car parking in that section and the speed at which cars travel along that stretch of the road as they exit, and I've even seen people come in the exit and drive the opposite way. Now, the problem is the risk to children. Children go running out, packed up their picnic. They go running across to their cars, often which are parked on the other side of the bitumen road. And if there were not that little fence there right now, I could have seen a number of accidents that have happened in that car park. Because they are trying to they're running, it's all over, they've had a party. That whole area is chock-a-block with cars in summer. Saturdays and Sundays, all the way down beyond the exit part, beyond where the fence is actually going to end. And I like the idea of gardens, in the bottom section, because it's not a through road. The problem with that little section of the road is it's the through road. And as I said, I've seen cars travel come in the exit and drive down in the wrong direction. They're supposed to come in from Howard Terrace, but they come in through that back section. If children are trained their eye to look one way, they're not even going to look the other way, expecting cars to come from the other direction. And I have seen some near misses. And I think there does need to be a fence there, and it needs to be a fence to protect the children from running out back to their cars ahead of their parents because they want to go home. It's the end of the party, that's the end of the day. That has not been considered at all, except it is considered in a risk management assessment of safety aspects. Problem is, any assessment done now, the place is as quiet as anything. There's, the people are walkers there. There's a few cars that park around the Wombat Waterhole on a good day. But the rest of the time it's quiet, deathly quiet, compared to full-blown summer and spring when it is incredibly busy and there are cars everywhere and the traffic needs not controlling people as much going onto the grassed area, is actually protecting the children running out into the traffic. I want you to consider that. I have no one else on here, so I'll go back to Councillor.
Thank you everyone for your input and support. As the Mayor has said, there's no denying the value of the fencing around the playground. It really helps and protects and works to protect the safety of children. And that's in this section here where it is already in existence immediately around the Wombat Waterhole. Whether we need that type of fencing for the whole of the park, even further down and then beyond, as Councillor Turnbull articulated, beyond the Boomgate down to the other section of the interface with Devonport Terrace, and then on all the other sides of Hazelwood Park, we don't know. I don't believe we need that heavy-duty fencing. I think that's not appropriate, and I think it'll be really costly, even if it is recycled material and designed in harmony with to look like timber. My problem is that we actually do need the original community consultation for that type of fencing was undertaken in 2011, and it was specifically done for that Wombat waterhole and that play space. It included state heritage input because this is a state heritage park, and they have to do an assessment of changes to the park. So there has been no state heritage assessment of this extension and whether that is an appropriate type of fencing. So that's why I've asked for this. I think we need it. I know the area, I know the balance we need to have between safety, access to the park, ability to improve our vegetation and our environment in the park. There's a whole lot of many factors. The traffic is slowed down by so many of them. I mean, apart from the odd people who go the wrong way, which is a compliance issue. But a report of this nature following the community consultation would be very valuable for us to be able to determine how we can manage. This is our iconic park. Fencing in the park is crucial, and I don't think it should be ad hoc and bitty. I think we need a holistic approach, and so I'm asking you to support an assessment of that and a report to come back to council. So hopefully you'll support this motion. Thank you.
Put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Right, it is... No, it is one. The motion is carried. That's good on notice. So Davey, sorry Chris. Councillor Davey again, 13.2, motion on notice watercourse management. $57. Yes, because you're always late anyway.
Yeah, because we've got some meaty stuff to deal with. East-West, that's fantastic. Unley coming on board. We need you back as our mayor.
I guess we go home. Cora, go.
Madam Mayor, I move that we consider the original... can we go back to the honours system one?
Yes, that's right. We're going to do honours system one first.
Has Bronnie gone back?
Yes, she's going to leave.
We should have told her. We're going back to the 2022 Queen's Birthday Honours resolution, and I'll move the motion that the City of Burnside congratulates Dr. Susan Marsden, a local resident and member of the City of Burnside Heritage Reference Group, on her appointment as a member of the Order of Australia, AM, in the Queen's Birthday Honours for significant services to history and heritage as an author, academic and speaker. The City of Burnside also congratulates the following... Yes, I agree, yes, new para. The City of Burnside also congratulates the following Burnside residents... And Sports Administrator, thanks, who also received Queen's Birthday Honours as members of the Order of Australia, AM, on the June long weekend. Mr Geoffrey Ellison for service to tourism and community, Mr Richard Hearn for service to aged care and community, and Mr Wally Bell for services to Rugby Union, Burnside Rugby Club.
I don't think we need on the June long weekend.
Leave that out then?
Yes, I agree, delete that, yeah, just after AM.
Leave AM though.
Yes, leave it. AM in.
No, they're all AMs.
Are there any PMs?
So hopefully you'll support that.
Okay, so I'll put that now.
I'm happy to second
You're
it
happy with
like I did
yeah,
the
she
first
did
time
before,
round.
yes. So it was moved by Councillor Davis and Davey and seconded by Councillor Cornish. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Now we'll go back to 13.2, watercourse management. Before we do, I just need to remind you that we must do the confidential item before this evening is over. We must get the confidential one done, which is 15.1.
This shouldn't take now.
Well, I'm hoping, but I'm just giving a warning because stranger things have happened in the past, and people don't like doing extra time around this place. So, okay, let's go. Councillor David.
Well, I was going to move, Mayor, that we move to 15.1 immediately. Get it over and done with.
Well, then we'd have to ask people to leave and then come back again. No, we'll just do this first.
Well, I've moved it.
There's a motion on
Well,
the floor.
do we have a seconder? I'm suggesting you unmove it, but we've got no seconder either, so... Okay, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Motion on notice, watercourse management. I'm moving that the
I
administration...
don't think you need to read it out unless you've
Even
made a
for
change.
people at home?
They've got it, they should have a copy,
Okay.
and they can see it, probably.
So thank you. My reason for moving this is that we are increasingly finding we have issues alongside our creeks and watercourses, and piping systems, of encroachments, lack of understanding of easements, which aren't always straightforward, and whether there are easements. And so I've done a fair bit of work to look at how we can manage these, which are essentially watercourses, in line with our watercourse policy, which is pretty specific. We only reviewed it in 2020, which talks about how, well, I've written it in the discussion. Watercourses in our urban areas are substantially altered environments and have often been impacted by many degrading influences, including encroachments by landowners, and we're increasingly finding this. The diversity of management required for watercourses and the geographical area they cover necessitates actions from a number of departments within council. So, to my mind, that's both planning and infrastructure, and actions are necessary in partnership with community, government and other organisations from time to time. So I think we've got responsibilities under the Local Government Act, the Planning, Development and Infrastructure Act, and our City of Burnside policies, including the Watercourse Management Policy, to plan, maintain, protect, enhance and deliver watercourses to the required level of service and condition that meets the needs of the community now and into the future, as well as to preserve and maintain their environmental values, including the natural vegetation and water quality. To undertake these responsibilities, we need to be fully informed of the extent, status and health of the watercourses in Burnside. There have been some historical as well as more recent examples of encroachment onto community land identified recently. So a review of the systems we have at Burnside to identify and manage these in association with the planning systems is critical for good governance. So I believe we need to start this process. I think we have a duty to our community, a duty to good governance, and I'll take on board any input, negotiations about timelines, because I realise this is quite a piece of work that we need to do. But currently I don't believe we have the systems in place to be able to manage this effectively and efficiently so that we know what's going on. So hopefully you'll support this motion.
Councillor Hubel?
I just have a question. Is it appropriate to ask now or?
No, we have to have a seconder first. Is there a seconder? Councillor Jones. Oh, okay. Now, Councillor Hubel, you can ask a... no, you can't. Councillor Piggott is first.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Piggott. Just straight off the bat to the administration, through Your Worship, is this time frame realistic?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I did have a conversation with Councillor Davey regarding this, noting that we feel we could meet the December 22 timeline for the complete report, and we may be able to provide some preliminary details by August. So I definitely won't be able to complete it by August, but December is achievable.
Councillor Piggott.
Thank you. I wish to speak against this motion. I thank the CEO who has provided comment on both of these motions tonight, and I read those with interest, as I did read Councillor Davies' justification for both of the motions. This one's compelling to me. I actually don't think there is an argument that there's this growing problem around watercourses. If that's based on McKenna Reserve, which of course we have gone backwards and forwards on, happens to be over a watercourse, but actually I don't see this work really coming out of that issue. If it was going out and finding out, you know, what encroachments are out there, whether they're on watercourses or not, maybe so, I could see that argument. but I can't see an argument for doing this level of work around watercourses, where largely it would appear they are doing what they are supposed to be doing, and that is allowing water getting from one spot to another, and without incident. Then you look at just the sheer magnitude of the work. It really is, if it's an issue, we really need to narrow down where the issue is and brief administration accordingly. Having a report, I think, requested across 1,600 properties on a sort of seems to be a bit of an increasing problem, I don't think is good use of administration time in an election year or any year, actually. I don't think that's the case. So I do really think we shouldn't be negotiating on time here. I don't think there's a justification to get this report in its entirety.
Councillor Lemon?
Yes, I have a couple of questions, if I may. The first is through you to the CEO. This is, as has just been alluded to, a massive amount of work. Do we have the staff for it? Would we need to put somebody else on? Is my first question.
Through Madam Mayor, the short answer is we really don't. If this gets up, we would utilise internal staff for one part of the report, but that would entail them being pulled off existing projects. The second part of the report probably would require us to engage external resources to complete.
And my second question is this something that's a bit more complicated, and you might not be able to answer it, is this something that would naturally occur over time as part of our city master plan?
Through Madam Mayor, I don't know if it would have come through the city master plan, but I believe if and when there are issues that arise, we would deal with them as we become aware of them, as a matter of course.
That is a good. Councillor Hubel.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Turnbull.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Councillor Piggott said it's not really a big issue, but it's becoming an issue. There's a Stonyfield group of residents who are now online, and they share lots of things together. And one came in today that his insurance premium went rocketing sky high because he was built over the pipes, and they said he might flood. There was a risk of flooding. So he actually shopped around and got to another insurance company. But that sort of thing's starting to happen. So if we did actually map perhaps Stonyfield Creek to start with, and then work out where those places are that have this issue, it would be a start. And we do need a record in the council so that people can ring up, so residents ring up and say, I didn't know I was on a water course. Here I am. I'm on a storm road pipe and my insurance company, blah, blah, blah. So if we started small, went big, that would be a big help.
If I may, Madam Mayor, just to provide insight into that thought, Council is already provided with flood overlays from the state government that clearly articulate parts of the city of Burnside that are potentially subject to inundation in certain frequency of flooding. We don't need this body of work to understand that impact, particularly as it relates to an insurance question you raised.
So in answer to that resident, you would recommend that councillor got that resident to contact council to find out about their situation so that they are not afraid about it.
More than happy to help out in that context.
Okay. Councillor Hubel.
Yeah, just a question. And this is in light, I guess, of the recent emergency culvert works that were brought to our attention, which I guess I read into that we do have a certain amount of knowledge of culverts, obviously, but of watercourses in general. Is there a process that's currently underway within administration where we have a knowledge of risk areas and we're responding to? I guess clarify what I'm asking about is when the emergency culvert issue arose, what were the circumstances behind that? Like, how did we know that, hey, this is something we need to do? Because it happened all quite quickly.
So through Madam Mayor, my recollection was we were inspecting our pipe work to do our the assessments of the condition assessments, and so as part of our regular maintenance and inspection regime, that's how that came to light. That those particular culverts weren't going to run to their indicated lifespan, and we had to intervene earlier. So we picked that up as part of our normal inspection program.
Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I just want to continue on with what Councillor Turnbull just said. Look, I can see this motion from Councillor Davey. It's been constrained by the caretaker period. So we're rushing, where I understand that we can't really do everything that we'd love to do at this time. And therefore, we should look at those creeks which have been in the news. And one is Stonyfield Creek, for instance, and there's still an issue with silt coming down that creek, as with Third Creek, as Councillor Davis had been in previous years. But what I'm looking for here is that we don't look at every creek line, but we do it in stages. Now, Councillor Cornish has been very good to the ward councillors. I think there were 3 wards that were affected by Stonyfield Creek. He said there were 40 properties, I think, I counted, in his email to us some time ago. And now I think we've just heard that 3 of them should be investigated further, of those 40. So it's not a major issue as such, as we thought. So I do understand where I think Councillor Pickett said that, you know, is this such a big issue? It is, I think, can be a big issue. And McKenna brought it all out for us. So I can't support the motion as it is, because I think we're rushing again, because we're worried about the caretaker period, the first caretaker period I've been through. So I know we want to do some things, but I'm just wondering whether we could, through Councillor Davey, just say, look, can we concentrate? We understand we're kind of supportive of what she's saying, but we just concentrate on one particular creek. I'd also put Second Creek in there as well, because that's also another issue for us, which comes through our ward and also Councillor Davey's ward. But that's my suggestion, and I'll leave it on the table and see what the rest of the council thinks.
Councillor Davey,
I just had a question, if I may. Thank you, Mayor. Bearing in mind what's just been said, Councillor Cornish identified some areas that he had concerns about, and they've been identified, and that was a quarter of, that was 40 of them. Do we not have GIS mapping of all of our land holdings and properties and land across Burnside that people like our planners already use? So we have comprehensive mapping already from that perspective.
Madam Mayor, I'm just going to need some clarification. When you say mapping, what do you mean?
We can get...
Sorry, you want me to...
Sorry.
Is there anyone else on the list?
No. Oh, yes. No, they've gone.
You know, when there's a matter that was raised, like the encroachment at McKenna, we've got GIS mapping that maps from above. You can see all the properties and then the watercourses that go through it. Do we not have that for all of our suburbs across Burnside, or those just adjacent to watercourses? And aren't they used routinely already for planning and other matters?
Okay. Through Madam Mayor, I might just get a comment from Mr. Cooper on that one.
Through the Mayor, that is correct, yes. We have mapped GIS of all public and properties and assets throughout the city. However, what we don't know is when an easement is listed on a certificate of title, and until we get that certificate of title, we don't map that on the GIS system. So to undertake the motion as requested, we would need to ensure we get all of the certificates of title for that purpose. In reference to the questions that Councillor Cornish asked and has distributed, that was a desktop review only. We have not done any thorough inspection other than a desktop review, so that was an estimate.
Now, Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I actually think there's quite a lot of work in this one, and I don't know if the timeline is sort of appropriate for it. I'm happy to send out the web page where you can search every property in the state, and you can overlay. If you learn how to use it, you can click, I want to see watercourses, I want to see earthquake, I want to see every bit of information that the state government's collected. You can actually overlay on every block of land. So I'll send that link around. It's very handy. That's how I found the properties. I just followed the watercourse up. But in terms of this sort of work, if you look at Keswick Brownhill Creek, we actually engaged a long-term project and process with the state government, the Stormwater Management Authority, separate authority, and they go creek by creek to manage it. And they get every council along the stretch to actually go, well, okay, what are the issues? We have to collectively work out how we're going to manage this creek, remove, debris from the creek to make sure water flows properly, etc., etc. And we've gone and all of our councillors have gone together, and we've set up a subsidiary, and we're going through and we're developing all the little projects along the way to mitigate flooding risk. So there's actually a big process regarding, watercourses that involves a lot of other parties. And I just don't think that we should actually go ahead and do this sort of work in isolation. If we want to look at Second Creek or Stonyfell Creek, I think we should actually approach the Stormwater Management Authority and actually say, we want to bump this up on the list of your priorities, ask them for that. I've done that with Second Creek after we had flooding down here a couple of years ago, and a couple of houses, there was, water this far in Toorak Gardens in some of the houses. I approached them and I asked them. Nothing's happened since, because it was a priority. It's now no longer a priority. Unfortunately for us, for those houses, up the river, they actually it goes through Marrittville, and that's in Nord Council, and then it comes back into Burnside, back through Tusmore Park. So you actually do need to get all the councils along the actual line of the watercourse to actually do it, because even if we did that and then the next council does nothing, that's where the water stops and it backs up upstream, which is us. So you need everyone along the watercourses to actually get together and do it. So I don't think this motion kind of goes the way that I'd like to see it to go. So I won't vote for it. Thanks.
Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cornish. That was really interesting. I have another question, and it's triggered by what was said earlier on. We need to do a title search to see if there's an easement. So can you tell me how long it takes to do a title search and how much it costs?
Through Madam Mayor, I can tell you a title search costs $38. No, it's not. Mr. Can, do you know how long it takes or Mr. Cooper, how long it takes to get a title search done?
It's $38, but through the mayor, once you've paid for it, it doesn't take long to come to us. But then obviously there's 1,655 properties. It would take quite a while to go through that.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, look, this is actually a huge amount of work. You need to go through every single pipe, every single creek, which is probably what people are thinking of. But then you've also got small watercourses like potentially what's in Penfold Park, where it goes into a small river and then there's a pipe that then offlows, every single one of them. And then go and do a title search on any house that touches it. And for me, it takes me about 6 minutes, 7 minutes to do a title search, because you got to plug in all the numbers, find the right property and the address. Probably take you about 10 minutes for each one. Do that for every single property that touches any bit of pipe or could do that. Then go and check the title search, and then go and do a risk assessment over every single inch of that, the whole way down, to see if there's a flooding risk. And then go and also determine whether any encroachments are present. And so imagine if you were sitting there typing up this report, not in a, hey, let's just give this a wiggles once over. This is like, you actually have to do this to the standard that we would expect as administration. This is not just a, yeah, it's all good, thumbs up, thumbs down, Roman style. Every single thing is going to be detailed, every single metre, every single pipe, through the whole thing. And at the end of it, how much wiser are we going to be? Well, probably it's going to take a lot longer to actually do something more useful. So I think if the number of hours and the man hours and the reallocation of resources to this is astronomical, and in my view has little value to the city of Burnside or its residents. Because at the end of the day, what are you going to do with it? Not much.
Councillor Jones.
I think I'll speak to the motion. Look, creeks are important. People are very passionate about them, and there have been a lot of issues over the past 4 years with creeks and watercourses. Within the last year, we've had encroachment issues at McKenna Reserve, at Moorcroft Reserve, at Haslam Oval. Who knows what else is out there concerning our creeks? Councillor Hubel has spoken about discovering things about infrastructure needed emergency repairs. And I suspect that the emergency repairs that have been found are just the tip of the iceberg. So I think it is important that we know where everything is. And if we don't know where our easements are, well, how do we know what we're supposed to be maintaining and how we're meeting our responsibilities for managing watercourses? There are massive issues with water quality. I mean, you'd have to be blind Freddy not to have seen the uproar there is about Third Creek, the small part of it that runs through the Burnside Council area, and all the sediment that is allegedly coming from the quarry. And let's be clear, that water is what we're trying to harvest stormwater for era water. It's no wonder we've got problems with turbidity with all the sediment coming down the creek. So with a Bragg by-election coming along, I mean, we won't get the report by then, but this is an issue we've got some leverage to get the state government to do something about it. Stonyfell Creek's got terrible problems with sediment. Now, is that coming from the other quarry? Yeah. If we have this information, it gives us ammunition to do something about those quarries. Flooding in Waterfall Gully, talk to the Waterfall Gully Residents Association, it's a massive issue because you've got a creek which has a lot of private ownership, you've got some council ownership, you've got some state government ownership. It needs to be managed as a whole system, as Councillor Cornish has said, along Waterfall Gully, and nobody's doing it. Nobody wants to touch it. And I think that's us abdicating our responsibility to our ratepayers who live along First Creek. So I think there are a lot of issues to do with creeks. People are passionate about them. They are probably the most important environmental part of Burnside because obviously stuff grows around water. I think we can do better. People said it would be too hard for the council to follow up on land management agreements. And yet this council said, well, no, we think it's important. We think it should be done. We can't just say, it's too hard, let's not do it. So I hope you'll support the motion.
CEO just wants to respond.
Madam Mayor, I may have missed something, but I wasn't, if this gets up this evening, I wasn't intending to investigate water quality as one of the things that's asking for.
Water quality.
Yeah. I just need some clarification on that.
Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I will speak against this motion for a number of reasons, but I was swayed by Councillor Cornish in that this isn't just a single issue. I think this has come at the wrong time. I think we're 5 minutes away from caretaker. This is a huge job. I think there are a number of different issues that need to be investigated here. It's not, some of them we can do and some of them we can't. And I looked at easements, for instance. If we've got 1,600 properties that we're looking at that border onto watercourses, that's $60,000 just in title searches alone. That doesn't even include the sort of time. We'd have to dedicate a person to do this. And this is not the sort of place that we should be doing it on the fly with a motion on notice. This is a longer term plan, not that goes into a budget, which we finished with now. This is a longer term plan where we actually resource it properly with staffing. This isn't something you do on the fly 5 minutes before you go into caretaker. However, when you look at quarries, there's no reason why we can't wade into that in terms of looking at whether the quarries are in fact compromising the water quality of the creeks that come through Burnside. I see no reason why we can't actually take that up as an issue, should we so decide, but that isn't this motion. That is something else again. What I would like to see, at possibly in this council and possibly for the next one, is the sort of motion that says, scope this for us to achieve the end result of knowledge. What we would want is someone to scope the various components that need to take place for us to have this knowledge to be able to make decisions about it afterwards. That is the first thing we need to do, because we don't know what we're looking at here in terms of the quantity of work that we've got. I suspect it's huge. I don't know what the urgency for this is. And I also suspect it's actually going to be resource intensive, both in money and in people. So I'd like a scoping document long before we get to a motion dealing with the end of it. And I think that that's more important, so that you actually look at holistically the whole thing. And the scoping document could then also pick out what you could do first, what's really important first. And maybe it is water quality, maybe it is easements, maybe it is uncovered creeks, I don't know, but I don't think this motion will give us very much at the end of the day in terms of where we're going to go with it.
Thank you. Don't have anyone else on the screen, so I'm going back to Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone, for your input. This important issue is not being initiated on the fly. We've heard tonight it's a cumulative concerns being raised on a whole lot of issues associated with watercourses, culverts, encroachments. There's a whole lot of matters that have come to our attention, particularly in the last year. And my concern is that we need to be satisfied that there's a system in council, in the City of Burnside, to manage all of these issues, to manage our watercourses, to be able to identify easements, manage encroachments. We've heard we have comprehensive information available already via our existing GIS system, which our planners and other people use already. We also have LiDAR technology, that's more later. I know we use that on our trees and environmental systems. I don't know what sort of input that would, appropriateness that is for this. That's why I'm asking for the scoping exercise and an interim report. So it seems that we have the capacity to map and document these systems, but we don't know what we don't know. So that's my intention in raising this issue tonight, and we don't know the scope of it. I'd be happy that this review be scoped, as Councillor Lemon has rightly pointed out, and that this information be provided to us in the interim report with the costings and the resources involved. That's all I'm asking for. We will then be informed as to what action can or need to be taken and how it could be prioritised. So that needs to be by us, whether it needs to be by adjacent councils, as has been raised, and what the extent of easements are, what searches are required. I'm not expecting that it'll all be done in the next few weeks. The debate tonight shows that there are many unanswered questions and we don't know the risks and issues involved. So we have flooding risks, we know, but we don't know what other risks are present. So all I'm asking for is an interim report for the administration to go away and tell us, give us direction, and we can then decide by the end of August how this should progress, and it might rightly into the next budget session, whatever, link it to our master plan, whatever, so that we have a future ability to manage these systems. We can't just let things go, we have to start the process, and that's all I'm after tonight. So I hope you'll support this. Thank you.
I put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? division's been called, so those who are for the motion or supporting the motion, please stand. It's Councillor Davey, Turnbull, Jones and Hubel. Those against, Councillor Cornish, Piggott, Davis, Lemon and Dawes. Thank you. That's the last of the motions on notice, but we do have one confidential item, unless there's anyone with urgent or other business. I think we've already done those earlier. So 15.1, we need to, thank you, Councillor Cornish, you're always good at these. Go for it.
Oh, I'm not going to read
No, you don't need to read it, but it's there for those who are at home. We are now going to need to move into confidential mode, so for the next item for discussion. So the room will be cleared as well. And I'll put the motion that we go into confidential mode. Those in favour, please raise your hand.
Who seconded?
Second, we didn't get a second. Councillor Dawes seconded it. Okay. No, we had a mover. Councillor Cornish moved. Councillor Dawes seconded. All those in favour? Against? Carried.